It is Sunday night. We're talking baseball, and I got a special guest all coming up next in the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast. Happy Sunday evening, everybody. Welcome to the RotoWire Fantasy Baseball Podcast, sponsored by Prize Picks. We appreciate them for the sponsorship. I am Scott Jenstad, and with Jeff Erickson out of town this week, I got a special guest, one of my favorite people in the industry, one of the smartest guys in the industry, too, whether I like him or not, just one of the smartest guys. Got Paul Sporer. Paul, thanks for jumping on. I really appreciate it. It should be fun. I'm looking forward to chatting baseball with you.
Thank you so much for having me on, Scott. I love this show. It's one of my favorite things to kind of cap the week, but then also kick off the next one. That's kind of how I view it. It's that transition for me. It's a great way to calm down on Sunday night, too. So hopefully, filling in Jeff's chair here, I give people the same enjoyment that I get from the show each week.
Well, beautiful. I really appreciate you jumping on. Obviously, we've met multiple times in Vegas at drafts and stuff, and you're definitely one of my favorite people to catch up with. When we do see it there. So hopefully that'll happen again soon. Before we start, why don't you let everybody know where they can find all your fantastic work, podcast, writing, all that kind of stuff?
Absolutely. I'm over at Fangraphs. Basically, you just go to fangraphs.com or fantasy.fangraphs.com. I do a daily SP chart where I rank the starters, kind of give 10, 12, 15 team recommendations with maybe a little blurb about them, how I'm feeling. Always answering the comments in there if you have questions about, should I start this guy? What about in this league type? I also do the podcast, The Sleeper and the Bus, with Justin Mason. We do that 3 times a week, and then he has a 4th episode with Jason Collette on most Sundays. I'm also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Sporer, where I stream a few times a week. I do a box score show a few mornings a week where we just go over the box scores and talk baseball. It's like a box score podcast almost. And then I also work at Out of the Park Baseball, which is a baseball simulator that fantasy nerds, the fact that you like fantasy baseball, you'd probably like OOTP. It's an amazing game, and I have a great time with that too.
Do you still Twitch MLB The Show and all that with the new game and everything?
Not as much. No, I'm more on OOTP and then real baseball. I've aged out of it, and time. It's one I don't mind being bad. Like, that's fine. I can take some beatings from the young kids out there. It really is just time. I still enjoy MLB. I still have it, but my hours on it are limited because with the OOTP gig and Fangraphs, it is a lot. Yeah,
it is time consuming. Like, I try and play too, and I'm like, I can't go online because people like the 13-year-olds will just smoke me and then talk crap to me too. I try and avoid that. But well, appreciate you jumping on. I got to tell you, I'm sure I've told you this before, but you're used to the SP guide, talking pitchers. You're one of the best pitcher guys to talk to. Reading that guide, man, made me better at this game. It's kind of when I started to get better at NFBC and the main event and stuff. I do miss that pitcher guide. It was an awesome publication. So
thank you so much.
I'm sure I've told you that at some point, but man, that work was awesome. And obviously you do great work at Fangraphs, but the SP guide was like my first intro in a lot of these stats and stuff, and like kind of realizing that ERA and WHIP were not the end all be all. So it was always really fun to read that.
I had a great time with it. It was a huge undertaking every year, but the people
every pitcher was broken down.
Yeah, every pitcher I could just go on them as long as I want. And 100,000 words later, I linked up with Doug Thorburn, who brought his mechanics know-how to it, and I was really, really proud of that product. So, as I got full-time jobs in the industry, which I'm very grateful for. Once I worked for RotoWire for a while too. Now with Fangraphs, it just wasn't time feasible, but I still write about pitchers all the time. So it's still there in spirit, just not as detailed as it used to be.
It's always really good. Since we're talking pitching, you got the Tigers hat on. Are we at the point where Tarik Skubal is the best pitcher in baseball?
He's certainly up there. I will not dodge the homer allegations if I say yes, but I certainly can make the case outside of just the Tigers garb. He has really panned out, and I think sometimes, when we prop a guy up like this, because we propped him up off of 80 innings. Let's be clear on that. There was gamble there. It wasn't so surefire. Yeah, we all had him in our top 20 at kind of the very least. The most aggressive probably had him in their top 12, 10 even for Tarik Skubal. And it's panning out beautifully. We don't talk about those ones enough. We always just focus on like kind of the busts of guys that we pushed up. Sure. Like he and Glasnow, they're working out. I know that you have to go through the rest of the season too. But, while we're lamenting Royce Lewis getting hurt again, or Mike Trout, I'm naming a couple offensive players, but like we're lamenting some of the early round busts. Those are 2 guys that have really, really clicked on, Tyler Glasnow and Tarik Skubal, and I think Skubal has a great case as the top pitcher in baseball.
if we're drafting tomorrow, it's him and Wheeler are 1-2, right? I don't you whatever
Absolutely.
you want to, whatever kind of exact order you want to put them in. They're 1-2, and I think Glasnow's probably third, but I think it's Skubal and Wheeler be 1-2 in just about every draft right now.
Yeah, I think so too. I wouldn't get away from either of them. I'm still very hot on Burns, but the
Yeah.
strikeouts are down a little bit, right? And it's more an annoyance than a problem for me, but you're starting to pick nits when you're up there at that top, right? Because they're all studs. So I agree. Wheeler, Skubal, 1-2 in some form or fashion.
Yeah, I mean Skubal's K minus walk right now is like 26%. Like it's nuts. He's been fun. Pitched really well again today. 6 2/3, 10 strikeouts, only 1 earned run. He's one of those guys that like he's pitching. I'm watching the game. It's like it's you're shocked when he doesn't have a really good start. So it's been fun. You're right. We don't we focus so much on the bust and who doesn't pan out. It's fun when someone that was pushed up and there was people like it's kind of high for him. When it's kind of fun.
Yeah, he's been great, and huge win over the Brewers today. Obviously, I don't have huge hopes for the team because they just don't hit enough. But nice little offensive barrage. I think it was their highest scoring inning, 8 runs since 2021 for the Tigers, and so that helped Skubal coast. And that Brewers team is tough. I don't love my starters going against them, and he handled them beautifully.
And you say not too much hope, but I mean they're in the mix with the wild card team. Like it's June 9th and the Tigers in 1 game under. Like you got to be pretty satisfied. At least next couple months, like all these games matter for a while.
Absolutely, and there is still a path if some guys get going offensively. Like they have some of the talent. Obviously, Torkelson got sent out. Keith had a little flourish there, but we're still not quite seeing it consistently from him. And even Parker Meadows is a guy I still have some hope for. So they have some guys. I don't want them to do anything too crazy. The pitching is definitely there, though. And the upside is, or at least the silver line, not upside, would be that if they don't make it, then Jack Flaherty should bring back a haul, an absolute haul.
Yeah, he's been legit good, too. Like, you look at the numbers, like, oh, is it that good? And you go deeper, and like, yeah, he's actually been legit
He's been killing it.
What are your thoughts on Torkelson? Obviously, we talked about him a bunch last week because he got sent down like an hour before we did the show. We're trying to figure out drop or not. How do you feel about Torkelson? Do you think it's kind of a mind reset? He's been hitting pretty well the first 4 or 5 games in the minors. Obviously, last year struggled early and then mashed in the second half. Do you think he's back up soon? What do you kind of think from Torkelson? Kind of as a from a fantasy perspective, what we're looking at. You think he's back soon? You think it's a while? What do you think happens here?
No, I think it should be soon if Torkelson continues to hit, like you said, off the first 5 games, 963 OPS with a homer. Just feel some success. Once he hit those 2 homers in that 1 week, I was like, okay, this could be the jump start. But if it isn't, he needs to go down. And it wasn't. He had 2 homers and went right back in the tank. He did get another couple homers mixed in, but they were spread far apart. And so I totally understood it because at a certain point, you need a guy to just feel some success for once. Let some hard hit balls actually fall in. Torkelson has some good underlying metrics still. Like there is still reason for hope. And of course, the pattern that he kept last year with the slow start and then the awesomeness kept people buying in like, well, hey, maybe he's doing it again. You can't always bet on that. But the second he comes back up, I'm going to be back in on Torkelson because I do think there's plenty there to be excited about. And it just hasn't quite worked out. Hopefully this is the mental reset he needs because the skills are definitely there.
Yeah, when you go 31-94 in the major league level, you've proven that you can do it a little bit. I think he needed a mental reset. He felt like you're right. He had this couple of home runs, but then he was like 0 for 18. Like you could tell every at bat he's pressing, trying to hit a 5-run homer. Like it was probably probably a good mental reset there. But speaking of fantasy strategy, one that I kind of struggle with, I wanted to ask you about is we're kind of 2 months into the season. It's a good time to kind of readdress, look at your team, reassess stuff. What you thought 2.5 months ago might not be what you think now. How do you deal with like I think the early underachievers are like you guys you took in the first 5 rounds, like you're just kind of riding with those guys. Yep. Maybe if you're in a trade league, you're seeing what you can get, but you're starting those guys. You're probably not dropping Randy Arozarena. You're probably still starting Pablo Lopez, whoever it may be. What do you do with the kind of the mid-round guys? These guys I kind of struggle with. I look at him like, oh, I like this guy at draft. I'm just gonna leave him in there. And I look up and it's been 4, 5, 6 weeks of no production. I'm like, I need to figure this out. Like Alex Kirilov, Brian Bayo, Jordan Montgomery, just some names out there. MJ Melendez, Gavin Lux, guys that had some spark early on in the year. Lux maybe was wishful thinking more than the rest of them. But what do you do with guys like this? Are you like digging in the secondary stats to try to figure out if there's still what you like there is still there? Are you like, it's been 2 months, I need to cut these guys, I need to figure out, pick up Paul DeYoung or whoever the hot flavor is? How do you deal with these guys? Because I think it's a weakness of mine that I think I wait a little too long on these guys that I liked 2.5 months ago with thinking like, I liked him for a reason, I got to keep playing him. But we're 11, 12 weeks in.
It's time to start making some moves. Yeah, and I think I've had a weakness for that myself. And in recent years, I've tried to be more cognizant of it and understanding that sometimes you just got to cut and move. And cutting somebody isn't quitting them either. And don't be too proud to turn around and pick them right back up. I did this earlier in the year. I went for flavor of the week, Oliver Dunn, cutting Willie Abreu. Turned around the very next week and literally undid the move. Picked up Abreu back for Dunn, and it worked out. Like, just don't be too proud about it. And so if you really like the guy, just put him on the little watch list thing. Most outlets have something, a little I, a little plus, something that you can put guys on a watch list to stay on top of them. But I do think that first, June 1st is a real big check-in for me. I tell people, be patient with 2 months for a guy that you really loved. And then you have to start making moves, right? If your team is struggling, you can't just keep hanging on. I'm with you on Lux. I very much wish casted for him.
Yeah, I did too.
I totally underestimated just the difficulty of returning from that knee injury, I think. And it's tough, though, because some guys come back, you see Superman Bryce Harper come back in, 32 minutes from TJ and just be a god again. I get it. He's a walk-in Hall of Famer. So, his standards are a bit higher than Gavin Lux's. But some of these guys, and everybody's different. And I mean that, not everybody. I mean, every space body is different, and you don't know how they're going to react. We don't have their medicals. So I took a shot with Lux. It didn't work. I cut him actually quite a while ago. With Melendez and Kirilloff specifically, it's going to be kind of team-based too. Do I need an infusion of talent somewhere? Okay, then I'm going to move on. Melendez I had some hope for. I didn't end up getting drafted anywhere, and I was mad about it. I was like, I got sniped on him. Well, dodged a bullet on that one. But I think I'm moving off Melendez more than Kirilloff personally.
Yeah, I have two. I really like Kirilloff, and I don't know if maybe all the injuries have just taken a toll on him over there. But I love his swing. I loved him coming up, and I think maybe I just get stuck on that. And I look up and he's hitting 216 with 4 home runs or whatever it is, and you're just like. So I moved off mid-12s. I think I kept him in 15s for another week, but I'm starting to really be cognizant of the fact that I need to make sure those spots aren't just because I liked someone in February when I was doing my research, and if they're not producing and it's been 2.5 months, it's time to move. Interesting note in the chat in Jeff Erickson, who usually is on here, is online championship league. Someone cut Edwin Diaz last week. So obviously he's actually already rehabbing, and there's a chance. The Mets beat writer Anthony DiComo, I believe is his name, said that Diaz and Francisco Alvarez might be available starting on Tuesday for the Mets. He went for 294 in that online championship. That's I would have been heavy on that bid because I know Diaz was bad, but looked good in his rehab, and I think he just needs to get things going. But I mean, that's a potentially top 5 closer on the waiver wire that's pretty spicy.
I'd have gone crazy for him. I never considered cutting him. Now I'm talking about a main. It's 15 teams versus 12. I get it. I still think
at 12, that's a different.
I wouldn't have done it either. I really, really wouldn't have. And I know we just got done talking about like being aggressive and maybe not holding guys too long. This is a different situation. I was always going to give Diaz a decent bit of time that he needed to come back. And the fact is, he's kind of beating the estimate that I put in my head because I'm always conservative to the negative end with the timetables. So that's a blunder. I think we just have to call it what it is. That was a blunder move there, and I would have been in the 300 range for sure, even in a 12-teamer to go get him. Saves have been a nightmare. I've griped about it in the chat of this show multiple nights this year. I hate the saves grind so much. I didn't want to be a part of it this year.
Would you what would you like suggest no saves in fantasy, or you just would
no. I just pay for
earlier?
them. I pay for them. I try to pay. I forget who said it. Probably Todd Zola or Pianowski, or maybe one of you or Jeff, one of the smart guys for sure. You're going to pay for saves. Is it at the draft or at the FAAB table? I don't want to commit all my FAAB because I don't want to commit the time either. Reliever Recon is a brilliant Patreon. They cut a lot of that time, and I'm thankful for them because I am in the saves grind this year, but I hate it. And the problem this year is my aces aren't actually acing. Diaz and Hader are the 2 aces. And then I didn't get that secondary guy. And maybe this can lead us into another thing. My secondary guy was supposed to be people that watch my streams are probably laughing like PJ in the chat because I gripe about this almost every day. But I was going to get Robert Suarez to be my backup. My like number 2 guy, and the Korea save, Scott, killed me.
He moved up like 3 rounds for that Korea
save. And it just completely took me out of it, and I didn't have a pivot, and that's a blunder by me. You have to have a backup. Like, you can't get so dead set on a guy. Evan Phillips was the other one. Both of them. They both got Korea saves. They both jumped up. Killed me.
All I said was I hope both games are blowouts because I don't want either guy to get a save, and each one got a save.
Yes.
I was like, I was like, couldn't have worked out worse. And then main event time, they both moved up. But you mentioned Robert Suarez. We were talking a little bit before we got on here. Hasn't pitched since June 1st. Doesn't have any save ups. Do you have any sort of ideas, something going on with him? They just kind of giving him a break since they have any save ups? I think he's 17 for 17 on saves. He's been a godsend.
He's been absolutely wonderful. I think this was maybe just a kind of blip in the schedule where things didn't quite work out for it. They ended up losing 5 in a row at one point. And the couple wins that they had this weekend were blowouts, 10-3, 13-1. Apparently he was up Friday. Robert Suarez was ready to warm up, but then they pulled away, so they didn't use him. But you and I were even saying, at some point, don't you just force him into a game since June 1st? So that's a little surprising, but at the same time, maybe it's the perfect recharge. He is a bit of an older guy, and we don't know. Maybe he was dealing with something that wasn't IL worthy, but if they could snake a free week, then they're doing it. And so maybe that's what it is too. So I'm not too worried. We haven't seen any news on it, but it was peculiar that Robert Suarez literally hasn't pitched since June 1st.
Yeah. I guess they play tomorrow and they have a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday series against the A's. So maybe they're figuring they're going to win some of those games. But yeah, I think I would have forced an inning probably on Saturday if
definitely.
But speaking of rough cuts, someone in the chat cut Yainer Diaz last weekend before the 3 home run week this week. 3 or 4? Might have been 4, but he went as a monster this week.
You know what? That goes back to what we were just talking about at the Open about those guys in those middle rounds. And this is your nightmare, right? That this happens as soon as you cut them. The problem is there's no way to really plan for it. Like you're never going to know, right? And I will quote the proper person this time because I know it's Scott Pianowski who said it, but he said, if you never make a bad cut, you're probably being too conservative with the back end of your roster and even some of those middle guys. So coming into this week, Diaz had a 636 OPS with a 249 average and just one homer maybe. It wasn't that 3 homers. Okay, so but that's a pace of 9. It was not a good situation for Yainer Diaz. And catcher is actually kind of deep. You know, guys like Connor Wong floating around. I don't know if it was a main event league or not, but if it's a 1 catcher league, all the more reason. So I think you just caught a bad one on that. I wouldn't beat myself up. Did you get him back up? Who picked him back up? Because I would not be afraid to immediately undo my mistake and go back and get the guy. I'm not too proud for that.
Yeah, me either. I've done that multiple times. I do that all the time too. I mean, once he's back in the player pool, he's just a free agent for
just another guy. Yeah,
exactly.
Again, don't be too proud. And the only reason I stress on that is I have a couple of friends who literally, I'm not picking that guy up again. I'm like, you're an idiot. Stop it. Pick him back up if he's the right player.
No doubt. Speaking of an early guy who's maybe struggling a little bit here, especially since May 1st, any concerns with Freddy Peralta? A little bit of a bumpy stretch here since the start of May. Velocity was down his last start. He made a comment that he was just trying to rein it in and have more command. It was a little bit of a weird quote, but he's given up 3 or more runs in it's 5 of his last 7 starts. He has not got through 6 innings his last 3 starts. Any concerns here? Just kind of a quick little blip for Freddie.
I think it's just a standard Freddy blip, and I think something that maybe we need to get comfortable with is that maybe he's just never going to have a breakout mega ace, top of the scale guy. He's been great, right? I'm not here clowning him. 3.86 ERA, 112 WHIP last year in 166 innings. That's awesome. Everyone's happy with that.
But you're right. Only one year under 3 ever. I mean, granted, under 3 is elite, but he's only done it once.
And I think we've been kind of waiting for him in the beginning of this year. Anytime somebody does something at the beginning, we always get ready to project it out for the whole season. And I think we were ready to try to anoint him as a fantasy community, Freddy Peralta, as a bona fide ace. I don't think he is. I think he's just a very good 2, one of those guys that you love, but he's going to have his ebbs and flows. And those of us who play in Roto, we're only checking in on October 1st anyway. Head-to-head, folks, I do feel for you. And I think this is the type of guy that maybe you do lower a little bit. And it's marginal, but again, when you're picking nits within the top 20, something like inconsistency, I think would be enough to maybe push Peralta below somebody, say like Logan Gilbert, who I see as mostly just a quality start machine. So I'm not worried. There's nothing actionable about it, but it is a bummer. It's just kind of the ebbs and flows of a standard Freddy Peralta season.
Yeah, he's struggling with some home runs a little bit. The swing and miss is still really there. 13% swing strike rate, 31.5% K rate. Everything looks pretty good. The walks are up a little bit, but kind of in the Freddy Peralta range. It's not way out of scope for him. So it cuts down on home runs a little bit. He'll probably be back to where we need to be. I'm not especially worried either. When I looked into it, nothing is really change too dramatically. But it is frustrating when your ace or your two, has a month like this where you're like, you look up and it's a 5 ERA for the month. You're like, yeah, no wonder my numbers.
Well, and you know what's particularly frustrating is to open the month White Sox Tigers, and he drops 6 earnings in 8 1/3 on you. Does Peralta?
Yeah.
You get the 10 Ks, but you're like, come on. That's the toughest part, is when the schedule blesses you and you eschew that blessing immediately.
Right. Yeah, if you go at Atlanta, you're like, all right, I gave him some runs. But you see White Sox Detroit, you're like, I need these starts right now. But let's hit a few news and notes before we jump fully into FAAB. Weirdly, a lot of big names this weekend with like seemingly minor but frustratingly lingering issues. We've got Juan Soto missed the weekend. There was some talk he's be available off the bench today. He did not come in the game. The Yankees won the game 6-4 tonight.
And he had a helmet on ready to go the day before too. I did on Saturday.
I think he might have just been trolling Boone though, trying to trying to bully him into getting him in the game. But
that's very much something Soto would do.
He was messing with Garrett Colder's interview yesterday on the Fox Saturday broadcast. It was pretty funny. He just wouldn't leave him alone, and it was I think Cole called him a very well paid comedian or something like that. Was how he referred to him.
I bet he's a real cut up. I like Soto quite a bit. I like the shuffle. I don't mind when pitchers don't like it, and there's that kind of like machismo back and forth. Yeah, that's great. But I love Soto.
I'm good with all of it. I love Soto too, and he's just absolutely mashing. I mean, I think you might have actually said it on Twitter. It's like one of those guys that like. You're like, oh, Soto going to New York has to work, but it never really. It doesn't always work. But man, this is just flat out work.
I took him. He was my number one pick on the good main team that I have because I believe in it so much. It's just like, in what world does this not work? And it's been even better than anticipated. This looks like a minor blip for Soto. I'm not worried. We'll get maybe some news tomorrow if there's anything actionable for lineups. But as it stands right now, I think I'm going to leave him in the lineup because I think this isn't going to be anything too crazy.
Yeah, I agree there. Manny Machado's missed 4 straight with a hip injury. Corey Seager missed the whole weekend with a hamstring. Rafael Devers missed today with some knee soreness. He'd been on fire too.
Oh my gosh, yes.
You hate to see all those. Any of those guys you're really concerned about? I think maybe Machado missing the 4 with the hip would be the most I'm concerned about. They seem like they think Seager's okay. Do you have any kind of feel with any of these big name guys? Are you worried about them? Any of them, past maybe the first series of this week, sort of thing?
No major concerns for any of them right now. The biggest is Machado. I shared that with you because it's a hip and you never know. And like, he hasn't been amazing thus far. 6 homers, five steals. You're not too upset about it with Machado. He's not why you're losing your league if you're not doing well. So yeah, stay in the course with them. Check in the news furiously tomorrow to make sure before I have to lock anything for the lineups if they're going to have any news about them. But yeah, all looks pretty positive with those guys. Like you said, more of a mild annoyance than it is panic zone.
Yeah, a few other notes. Trey Turner seems like he's actually close now, maybe activated next week or so. I don't think he'll be possibly for the first half of the week, but it sounds like we might get Trey Turner back in the lineup next weekend at Baltimore.
That'd be great. Obviously, anyone that lost him needs him back as soon as possible. So yeah, I love the 2 breakups of the hitting lineups in the NFBC universe, where you go Monday, Thursday, and then the weekend. It's just such a great thing to have. I'm a weekly guy. I like weekly better than daily, just because I don't want to have to commit that time all the time to my lineups. But I like having that switch there. So something like this, you don't have to decide to maybe miss in half the week with Turner. You can just wait till that second series.
Paul, you're the pitcher guy. We got a question in the chat. Would you start Seth Lugo versus the Yankees tomorrow versus the Yankees, or bench him?
I'm going to say depends on league size first and foremost. I started the daily SP chart so that I can finish it right away after you and I are done here. And right now he's got X's for 12s and 15s. And I'm probably going to put the X for the 10, but the note is going to be, if you want to bench him, I get it. So it's a little bit of a fence.
What about in a weekly league? New York, second starts at the Dodgers. That is a week right there. Let me tell you.
I'm going to pass. You know what?
Right.
I'm a trust your studs kind of guy, but I'm talking like bona fide studs. And no offense to Seth Lugo, but he's a statistical stud right now. I don't think he's like a bankable. This isn't Zach Wheeler. If a guy like Zach Wheeler had that, okay. I'll use another name from earlier, a less set ace. If Logan Gilbert had a set like that, I'm sticking with him. Lugo's a bit below that. I think you do pass because these are both super dangerous. In what universe do we really think he's going to get out of both scot-free? So yeah, I am out on Lugo this week. I think you just sit him. I wouldn't cut him anywhere, even in like a 10. I know there's like the thing like that a 2-start is a litmus test, that if you can't start them, maybe you need to cut them. Lugo will pass the test, where I will still keep him but let's say no starts anywhere. In fact, I'm actually going to change the SP chart for tomorrow right now and say I'm not going to start him.
I think that's as extreme a 2-star as you get. I mean,
absolutely.
Yankees at Dodgers is just about as bad as it gets right now. So I agree. There's no way I'm cutting Lugo anywhere, but yeah, I'm probably skipping that one too. That you're going in there hoping he gives up 6 runs in 12 innings and gets out of there. Like you're just hoping for not getting killed, and I don't really want to start that either,
and the thing of it is too, a bomb will not only erase a potential good start, it'll erase the last 3 good starts. So yeah, it's just too scary for Lugo.
Yeah, I agree there. A couple of quick notes things. Ty France went on the IL with a hairline fracture in his right heel. Brendan Rodgers, 10-day IL with a hamstring injury. Shocker there. Brendan Rodgers is hurt. Ryan Weathers, who's pitching really, really well.
Yes, he was.
15-day IL with a left index finger strain. That's a bummer because he had really, he was kind of like breaking out, but also looking really good. Like his starts were fun to watch. He was really coming together.
I was quite enjoying the Ryan Weathers experience. Yeah. Somebody that I've kind of, kept real tabs on basically since back in San Diego. Remember, he came up early. Yep. I think he was like 20 when he debuted with them. And Ryan Weathers, has had some false starts, but he was really putting something together. So hopefully this doesn't derail what has been kind of the makings of a nice season. He's at 3.55 ERA and a 1.14 whip in 71 innings with some quality skills to back it up. So hopefully this is a short-termer for Ryan Weathers. With France, I think he's a cut everywhere if you hadn't already cut him. Well, no, pardon me. He's been doing way better than I thought. Excuse me. I besmirched the great name of Ty France. He has a 116 WRC plus with 7 homers. My fault there. That said, I'm still open to cutting in the shower formats. 15s I'm going to hold. 10s and 12s I'm going to cut France. And I forgot the other guy you said. I'm sorry.
Brendan Rodgers. I'm cutting him.
Oh, yeah.
I haven't even thought about not cutting him. So, yeah.
Not even sure he's rostered anywhere. But if he is, you can probably.
If you play in a 10-team Colorado Rockies only league sort of thing, yeah. NL West. But yeah, that's about the extent of it. I'm going to talk Orioles when we talk to FAAB, so I'll skip that. But just a couple of quick notes. We mentioned Edwin Diaz and Francisco Alvarez. Francisco Alvarez may be activated Tuesday, so check the news on that. Garrett Cole, if you're thinking about maybe he was going to slide through with only 2 rehab outings, he is going to need at least one more rehab outing, so you can't put him in quite yet, but got through his rehab start today well. 57 pitches, 4 2/3 innings, came out healthy. I don't really care about the results, just came out healthy. It sounds like everything was looking good. So sounds like we're close on Cole, but not quite. You have to keep him on the bench at least 1 more week here.
Yeah, and that's all right. But you've waited this long. Another week won't kill you. He's
all you want is everything felt good and move forward. That's all you want. Yeah.
No setbacks for Cole is all you care about. The fact that the results are solid, icing on the cake.
Beautiful. So let's talk FAAB. But first, a note from our sponsors at Rare MLB. Have you ever dreamed of stepping into the shoes of a general manager? Welcome to Rare MLB, a groundbreaking fantasy baseball game where you call the shots yourself. Take charge and make your managerial mark by collecting officially licensed digital player cards of your favorite MLB stars. They aren't just any cards. They're your ticket to compete for over $1 million in total cash rewards and other amazing prizes. Imagine winning VIP trips to the MLB All-Star Game 2024 or getting your hands on signed merchandise from top MLB players. Here's how it works. Use your cards to set your lineup each game week. Real-world plays like hits, strikeouts, and homers will power your team's performance. Climb the leaderboards and snag weekly wins, from cash prizes to more cards and unforgettable experiences. But there's more. Build an iconic collection of your favorite teams and players to unlock gameplay bonuses and exclusive rewards. The rarer the card, the higher your score, and the bigger your edge in competitions. When you're ready to trade, the SoRare Marketplace offers a vibrant community of managers. Engage in live auctions, make instant buys, or trade cards peer-to-peer. Starting is absolutely free. Draft your first team of common cards today and feel the thrill of competition as you climb the ranks to baseball mastery. What are you waiting for? Join SoRare MLB today. Transform your passion for baseball into a quest for glory. Get rewarded for your baseball savvy. Sign up today with the link in the description. Get 50% off your first pro cards up to $50. It's your passion rewarded at SoRare MLB. So, Paul, I got you here. So we're going to start with starting pitchers in FAAB. There were a number of rookies that have been called up. We haven't had a ton of these this year, but we had a bunch of them this week. I was curious how you thought about them. Starting with Cade Povich in Baltimore, because he's we have a couple of guys here that we talk a lot of NFBC, but we obviously want to help everybody in every other league. But we have a couple of guys that weren't available in many leagues. But Cade Povich was called up for the Orioles, made one start. Didn't go especially well. A bunch of runs, a lot of base runners, but it sounds like he's going to get another start this week. However, it is against the Atlanta Braves, so not exactly a warm landing spot there. What'd you do with Povich? How do you feel about him kind of moving forward? What do you think the Orioles do with him? And what do you think about him kind of long-term too?
I was intrigued by Cade Povich because he's on a great team and he's a quality prospect, but I wasn't really going to get there with a big bid. And it seems like there was a few leagues, speaking specifically for the Maine, where they would have a manager who wanted to go big for him and only one, because he has like a 189 with a 14 backup, a 179 with a 22 backup.
Yeah.
All his big bids have weak backups. I wasn't going crazy for Povich, partly due to money savings. I need to save some money. I'm under 500 already. I'm tightening up the purse strings.
Yep.
So if I couldn't get him for like 15, 16 bucks, I wasn't going to do that. And you might say, well, you were never going to get him there. Well, there were 7 mains where he went.
I got him for 17 in mine. So I was kind of I'd like to get him for this price. I can't really do much more. And I was a little surprised that I was a little surprised by the lack of super high bidding. I mean, you're right. There was there was one aggressive person in each league at most.
And the one reason I think that maybe that was the case is because I think most of us believe that they're going to go get somebody and maybe some bodies. And if Povich doesn't really assert himself right away, then he'll get replaced. Albert Suarez is doing yeoman's work, 34-year-old coming back from the KBO, and he's been great. I don't think they really want to rely on him too much. He's eating up some innings here in the middle of the season. That's going to be valuable for them, but they're going to go out and get guys, and Povich's job is always going to be on that knife's edge there if he's not successful. Big opportunity here against Atlanta, against another guy, Spencer Schwellenbach, who just got called up recently himself. And Atlanta hasn't been amazing recently with their hitting, so maybe he can get him a little bit. That'd be a great rebound because, like you said, Povich wasn't awesome. I like him long term, meaning beyond 2024, but for this year, I was a little tepid on it, as evidenced by my bid. I love your $17. I was hoping for something similar, but he went 83 in mine, and guess what? The backup was my $16.
That's beautiful. Yeah, it's interesting that the only bids over 100 in the main event were actually by the same person. So the same guy got him for 189 and 179.
Oh, I didn't even notice that. Yeah. That's wild. And he got him another time. Pardon me for interrupting you. He got him a third time there for $39. So I'm curious what made him think he had to jump up that high in the other.
My only guess out looking, he's probably really low in money in that one.
That's a great call. Yeah.
Only thing I can think of, but that's a good point. But yeah, I was kind of in the same boat. Like I was like, if I could slide him through, I'd like to see what I have, but I'm not committing, so much that if I need to drop him in a week or two, if he loses his job or Dean Kramer comes back, like they just have a lot going on in Baltimore, a lot of arms, a lot of live guys, and even Cole Irvin is pitching well when he's there, and he's kind of their 6 right now, I guess, if everybody's healthy. But but again, same kind of thing. Like if he pitches well against Atlanta, maybe he gets another one, and then maybe starts rolling from there. So I was in if it was fairly cheap, and one league I got way outbid, and one league I got him. So I think it'd be fun to see what we got here.
I like it.
What about in Washington with DJ Hers? Got Trevor Williams is hurt, so he's got a rotation spot here. When I looked, it looked to me like a lot of swing and miss, but sometimes the ball's gonna be all over the place too. A lot of walks, which really scares me with rookies. I just think your first time through, like it's so hard to get these guys out as it is. When you already have walk issues, those usually get exacerbated even for guys who don't walk that many guys. I was a little worried that we may see a pretty high whip from DJ Hers in his starts, but I admit the swing and miss is intriguing.
I couldn't agree more. And yes, just to the letter of that, I agree. Heavy swing and miss, but too many walks and heavy reliever risk for DJ Hers, at least in the long term. This year they'll try to start him. They should try to start him as long as you can. You always want to do that with a guy, but I'm just not really seeing how outside of some major control development that Hers just doesn't end up becoming a reliever. He has nasty stuff. If they were like a little bit better and like kind of competing, although they've been a frisky little team. The Nats are not terrible at 29 and 35, decent offense and some decent pitchers that have stepped up, but they're not competitive necessarily. So again, start him, let him try to figure it out. But DJ Hers to me is a reliever, so that's how I judge him. And as such, I'm not really that interested.
Yeah, he is lined up to face Miami. It was kind of the only reason I kept him on my sheet for a little bit longer than I probably should have. So maybe I could slide that through, but I ended up kind of taking him off my bids. I just didn't want to. I didn't want to have to make the start. I was really worried about the walks, and that just affects whip too much. And that's one of our one of the 4 pitching categories for starters, and it really does matter there. Third guy who pitched this week, pitched really well his first start, and then got smoked today is Adam Mazur in for the Padres. He was roughed up pretty badly. They gave 8 earned runs. They let him eat that pretty good. 3 innings, 8 hits, 3 walks, 2 strikeouts after pitching really well his first start. Did the second start kind of take you off of Mazur? What'd you do in this in regard to him?
Yeah, it really did. Because even the first start, I was impressed with the results for Mazer, 6 innings and 1 run on 2 hits, but there were 4 walks against 2 punchies.
Yeah.
You know, I'm a prospect pedigree guy. I read Eric Ogdenhagen. I read a bunch of other folks too, but he's our guy over at Fangraphs.
Yep.
And so, you know, I go off of what they say a lot. I take a lot of stock in that. And he's always looking like kind of a mid-tier kind of guy, like a 4th starter type for Adam Mazer, and a 4th starter on a quality team. And I do think the Padres are quality, even though they're kind of still underachieving again this year,
Yep.
right at 500. But yeah, just wasn't there for me. And then once he got clobbered, I did what you did with Hurst, took him completely off as opposed to even having him on the list.
I did the same with Mazer too. I kind of had him in there, and I'm like, after he gave up earned, I'm like, I'm not gonna mess with this. And
Don't even tease yourself.
It's not just
like
the
that.
one start, but it's the fact like maybe he doesn't start next week. Maybe maybe they go to someone else. Like it impacts the team dynamic so much that I wasn't excited enough to be like, maybe I can stomach them kind of moving them around. I just wanted no part. A couple of guys who were not available in most NFBC leagues, but obviously we're talking a lot of leagues here. Drew Thorpe was called up, and then Hurston Waldrop. I can
That's
speak.
right.
Called up by the Braves. Had really good minor league starts. It did not go great today, but I think he's one of those guys that if he does have a good second start next week, we're all going to, in NFBC, we're all going to get a chance to watch him next week, assuming they use him. The numbers in the minor leagues were really good. The whip was a little high. The walks were a little bit high. Like I said, I can't always worry about that, but not a ton of innings. But what do you feel about these two guys? You think that we're getting potentially big bids next week if they pitch well this week? Where do you think they kind of fall out as we move forward here?
I definitely think, excuse me, we'll see the bids turn up if they pitch well. Now, Thorpe is going to be on the White Sox regardless, though. And, I know they're going to trade pretty much everything not nailed down. Thorpe will not be included in that. He was part of the Dylan Cease deal. He's part of the future. So, doesn't mean there can't be any value. We've seen Eric Fedde be nice for them. Garrett Crochet, of course, has been wonderful. So, I'll be interested in Thorpe if he does well. And he gets the 2 starts, like you said, at Seattle, at Arizona. So, that's nice. And then with Waldrop, he's part of a great team. So the fact that if he pitches well against Tampa Bay on the weekend, that's really going to push everyone to being interested in him. And it's a Sunday start. So it's that thing where it'll be fresh in everybody's mind.
Yep.
I almost don't want him to go 6 scoreless because then there's triple digit bids and I'm just not going to do it. And then, at least according to the RotoWire SP chart, then he would line up for a trip to the Yankees. So that's what you win if you get Waldrop, if everything stays on course there. So I am intrigued by both. I will keep, very tight tabs on them, but the way it's lining up right now, I'd be surprised if I wound up with either on my teams.
Do you think the Braves end up sticking with Waldrop or Schwellenbach? If you had to kind of figure, I know it's going to be your answer. Going to be who pitches better. You're going to move forward with them. But do you have a preference between the two? I mean, it seems like only one of them can stick because the other 4 guys are pretty much kind of locked in right now.
Totally agree. And then also similar to what Cade Povich is facing, they might just go out and get somebody. But if I have to bet on one of those two, I think Waldrop has a little bit a better talent, just a higher upside there. And Schwellenbach's command worries me. He has decent control, but he doesn't have great command. And that can result in homers, which we saw a little bit early on. And I just don't know how much they're really going to push him. Hurston Waldrop, I think definitely has the higher upside. So that's where I would lean between those two.
Someone we talked about a little bit last week, but was still available in 46% of main events, available all over the place in 12 leagues. Joey Estes in Oakland. Curious your thoughts on him. He pitched really well this week. He had a no-hitter, a perfect game actually going on. He threw 6 and gave up a hit in the 7th inning. Pitched 6 and a third against the Mariners. No walks, 1 hit, 5 strikeouts. Obviously no walks. He was throwing a perfect game. Gets 2 starts this week now. He was kind of lined up for 2 starts last week. The rotation got shuffled around a little bit. He's ending up going to have 2 starts this week at San Diego and at Minnesota. Were you in on Joey Estes and FAAB this week? And what do you feel about him kind of moving forward? He's been one of the few exciting arms in Oakland that we've seen the last couple of weeks here.
Yeah, they may be cultivating a few things there. JP Sears, Hogan Harris has done a few things, Rule 5 pickup Mitch Spence, but Joey Estes is really kind of standing out recently and earning some attention for himself, not only with some solid results, the .96 ERA. Now, this is a little bit hidden too because A's on Oakland, so Joey Estes is already probably getting short shrift due to that. But then the 467 kind of clouds the 096 whip because the simple fact is all of us fantasy players, like that ERA jumps out. It just does.
And he just had the one hugely bad start. Like he got 8.
Exactly.
He's had 5 starts to give 8 runs in one. I'm like, your ERA is going to take a long time to recover from that.
Exactly. And so I think it gets hidden that he's actually been pitching very well of late. I really was interested in a couple Oakland guys. Estes chief among them. 23% strikeout rate, 6% walk rate. That's a really nice 18% strikeout minus walk. Really, really happy with what Joey Estes is doing. And I do think he's a pickup in 15s, 12s, probably not 10s wins still, unless maybe you guys play a deeper league. I know some 10-teamers will lengthen the roster to give it a deeper league feel, in which case, sure, if it operates like a 12, yeah. But otherwise, he's probably just a standard streamer in 10-teamers. And who do they have this week? He gets San Diego and Minnesota. So for the two-step, I'm open to it with Estes, even in a 10-teamer. And then Sears is another one. They both get the two-step. I like both of them. They've both been pitching well for Oakland.
Yeah, I was going to ask you. I figured 15-teamers. I think he's pretty easy roster. I was going to ask you about 12, but you answered that already. A couple other guys. Some guys that came up and pitched well this week. Spencer Howard, who's still bouncing around in our world somehow. Tobias Myers in Milwaukee pitched well this week. Cade Povich pitched well for the Yankees this week. What do you think about three of you guys? Any of these guys that jumped out to you liked more than most? Or you find yourself moving up your list? Just kind of guys on your list.
I actually picked up and started Poteet, so I'm kind of intrigued by him.
Well done. I actually used him last week. Nice.
Yeah. So thank you. I liked Poteet back in Miami a little bit, and now he's with a great team in New York, and obviously they're winning. He only went 4 2/3, so he couldn't snake the dub. They didn't win the game anyway. It was 2-1 against the Dodgers. But yeah, I went ahead and went for him. I'm really intrigued by Cade Poteet. We'll see what happens here. It's probably similar to the Povich and Waldrop Schwellenbach situation, though. He's not a true prospect. He's 29 years old. But what I mean is that spot is probably just he's not gonna be able to hang on to it too terribly long, because you gotta figure it could just be Cole's spot, but even if it's not, they're probably gonna go get somebody else. So I like him in the short term. Cade Poteet, pretty interesting. Tobias Myers is somebody I've kept tabs on as well. I think I rostered him right when he first came up, and I ended up moving on from him. It was a short term situation, but the 8 innings of one hit ball against my Tigers was really impressive. And I know it's the Tigers, but you play who's in front of you.
Yep.
So I don't love to always just downgrade a guy because they did it against a crappy team. He handled the team very well. You go 8 innings of one hit ball, I don't care who it's against. So Tobias Myers is interesting and on a great team. And then Spencer Howard, it is funny that he's back in our lives again. Yep. I tell you, if you were pitching in San Francisco, I would at least give you a look, right? Because that park is so nice. They have a history of doing good things with pitchers. So I'm
also very crafty too. So
exactly.
I'll give you 5 and mix and match, and you got to go get Doval after that though.
I'm totally fine with that. I'll take my 5 and dive from you. Hope you get a few runs of offensive support, and I'll take my wins.
Beautiful. What about Max Meyer in Florida, in Miami? I guess it is. 75% rostered main event, available in 12s. Obviously, they've got some injury issues. We mentioned Ryan Weathers earlier. They got some spots here. How they've handled Meyer has been weird. They had him go down. He's pitching once a week, and he's only pitching like 3 innings. So he's like the opposite of stretched out. I mean, he's kind of more than a reliever, but not anywhere near starter. And he's not on a starter, not only not on a starter schedule, but not a starter's innings either. Do you have any sort of feel here? Obviously, a very talented arm. What do you do with him as a fantasy manager at the moment?
I was intrigued. I was actually in one of the 25% of leagues that had Meyer available, but I wasn't ready to pay the toll. He went 75 with a backup of 68. I was nowhere near that. Like I said, I'm pinching pennies, but I really do like Meyer. And he's somebody that I liked as a prospect. I will say, though, at the beginning of the year, when he broke camp, which surprised me, and it's clear that it was temporary because they sent him down and they're managing him, because there's no chance he was ever going to be just in the rotation for the whole 6 months this year. They just weren't going to do that coming off TJ. He's just more of a 25 guy for me, because I think it is going to be a headache with the shortened starts. Sorry, PJ, close your ears, but they're not a very good team anyway. So what's your win potential even when Max Meyer does go 5+? So while I do like him and I don't have any problems with people picking him up, just keep your expectations measured. Go in eyes wide open and understand it could be a very frustrating roster with Max Meyer despite the amazing talent. For me, I'm going to check back in 25 and probably be all in on him this winter, assuming nothing bad happens in the interim there.
That makes a lot of sense. It's hard to see him ever going 5 the way they've kind of moved. And they're clearly being careful with him. And I don't think they're going to suddenly throw him in major league games and have him go 7. Like, it wouldn't make any sense. Although it's the Marlins, so who knows? But someone in the chat asked about Chris Paddock. Could not line up better on paper. He is home this week. Gets the Rockies and the A's. Like, you couldn't bat that anywhere else. I assume if you have Chris Paddock, you got to throw this. Otherwise, this is one that, like, if you're not going to throw this, you should not have him on your team. I think this is one you pick up to throw. I mean, it can't line up any better on paper.
Couldn't agree more. Love Chris Paddock this week with Colorado, Oakland, both at home. I'm a Chris Paddock guy too. I like him in general. I like what Minnesota's doing. They have a type, right? Great strikeout, low walk, but home run concerns? Well, Colorado is not really going to cash in a lot of homers. Now, Oakland can. That is the one thing that they're doing offensively. So there is a little concern there. But again, if you've got Paddock, you have to start this, and he's very much an aggressive pickup in all formats. I'd pick him up in a 10 if it fit, right? Like, it's not a guarantee. What Justin and I say sometimes for a guy that's like viable in 10s is that he's a fit for a roster. It just might not be yours. You're not
dropping a really, really good starter to pick him up, but
exactly. Don't cut Lugo for him, even though we said don't start Lugo this week.
Last question from the chat kind of goes into FAAB here. Maybe he was a couple weeks ago, but Jordan Wicks in Chicago is an interesting arm. Ben Brown started the game earlier this week, and then they kind of went piggyback. He threw 3, and then he didn't pitch very well. And then Wicks came in and threw 3. He gave up only 1 earned run, 2 strikeouts. Do you think they're gonna? Any kind of feel about what the Cubs are gonna do here? Because I think we all want one of these guys to step up and just kind of get that job and be in that role and pitch 5 or 6. The piggyback doesn't help either one of them, at least for the fantasy stats. Do you have a preference between the two? What do you do with these kind of two, younger Cubs arms that we're kind of hoping break out here?
I have a bit more preference toward Jordan Wicks than Ben Brown because Ben Brown just doesn't have a deep enough arsenal for me to believe that he can consistently go 5. Like he has a reliever profile himself. I will push back a little bit on one thing though, that if you're the second man in the piggyback,
that's true.
That could be the wins cash in. Yeah. I mean, we've been chasing the Yarbrough Dragon ever since he netted 16 wins as a primary follower with the Rays. Now we've been trying to shoehorn guys. It was
beautiful when they were up 4-1. He'd come in the 4th. He'd come in the 3rd or 4th every time.
Magic. And it was just such a magical run. We probably will never repeat it, but Cubs are a capable team. Wicks is a nice pitcher. So if they are going to do that, please let Wicks be the second guy. Let Brown open.
You have to know that they're going to do it for it to work.
Exactly.
With Yarbrough, they did it every single time. It worked.
It became a pattern that you could bet on with him. So if that's where Wicks goes, then I'm very much interested. But if it is these 2 to 4 inning stints, sometimes starting, sometimes following, it becomes a very difficult roster in pretty much everything except for like NL onlys.
And obviously, the key point of what you're saying is he doesn't have to. He can go 3 innings and get the win. He doesn't have. As a starter, you got to go 5. You come in the 3rd, you pitch 2 1/3, but you're got the lead. You start with the lead, and you leave the lead. You're the pitcher of record, so that obviously was huge for Yarbrough that season with the Rays too.
So cool.
Any other pitchers that you were remotely interested in this week? Chase Silseth, stash.
That's the one. I scooped him.
Let's talk about it. That's the one I was going to ask you about. The rest of these guys on the list were kind of grab bag guys. But do you like Silseth going forward? Because he was someone I liked in the preseason too. He's only 14% rostered in the main event. Seems like he's kind of at the point here where you're going to do it. It's time to do it.
I'm a big Silseth guy, and he's on the Angels, which your win potential is going to be scant. But sometimes you just want quality innings too. And as much as I was griping about wins early in the year, if you follow my Twitter or watch me on my streams, I have been quiet about it lately because I've been finally getting some nice win luck.
Nice.
So I felt like I could take on a guy who's on a crummy team but has quality skills. I really like Silseth, both in the short term, which is why I stashed him this week, and in the long term, meaning in keepers and dynasties and things like that. I think he's a really live arm. Again, you got to deal with the Angels and their whole existence, but don't let that make you a shoe talent like Chase Silseth. So I was very pro on him. Again, didn't have to pay much either. I got him for $11. Happy to do that and take that shot.
And it was the time to do it. If you wait one more week and the news gets better, or maybe he makes a start this weekend, if he kind of slides, he might pitch against Giants this weekend. That price could go up. Question for you in the chat, real quick. We're talking about two guys. We're talking about you prefer Povich or Thorpe if you're going forward as a fantasy manager.
Let's go Povich, because I don't want to get too far out with either of them in terms of projecting. So we're looking at like a 2-3 week window. So give me the guy that's just on a better team. They're probably, I think Povich is probably better anyway, but even if you like Thorpe's talent a little better, just give me the better team context, because the talent discrepancy is just not enough to push Thorpe for me.
Gotcha. Good answer there. Real quick before we jump into some hitters, were there any relievers you were thinking about picking up or stashing or specking on this week? I know there's a lot of, kind of the last week to get Devin Williams stashes if you want. He was 77% rostered in the main event. The Rockies, good luck there. Tyler, was it Kinley had a couple of saves this week?
Yes.
Ben Joyce got called up with the Angels. I know everybody loves the arm, but I don't think we're quite at the closing game stretch yet. Andres Munoz pitched today, so they kind of eliminated, I think, everybody's Ryan Stanek bids. But was there anything you did with the relievers week? It felt like a week. You mentioned earlier chasing saves. You need saves. This didn't feel like a week where you were going to answer any of those problems.
No week has felt like that week. That's been the problem this year, and it's been really tough.
Yeah.
The crazy thing is, on the one hand, you have like so many teams that don't have a closer name. So you'd think, well, there's plenty of saves to just pick up here and there. And yet there isn't. There's just like nobody ever. And it's so frustrating. So no, I really wasn't. I wasn't just going to throw bad money out there after those guys. I have a Jeremiah Estrada share from last week that I'm hanging on to. We talked about the Suarez situation earlier. I don't think Suarez is in danger, by the way. I want to be clear on that for everybody. But if I can get all those Ks and the occasional save, he's on my bench right now anyway. Estrada is,
but if I have to use him, he's usable though. If you have a lot,
I think
you
so.
You don't like your starter in the ninth spot, like he could get you 6-7 strikeouts in a week with some nice ratios. You vulture a win or a save, and it's a really good week.
That's exactly what he's there for. Is that time where I'm like, I got somebody going to the Yankees or whatever. Boom, Estrada goes in, and then if something does happen as far as, which I'm not hoping for at all, but he would be the guy. So that was the most recent spec that I've taken, but it is rough out there, folks, and I'm feeling the pain with y'all.
Yeah, I never root for injuries, but I'll admit that Jose Alvarado giving up the lead today makes me happy. I got a lot of Jeff Hoffman.
Big Jeff Hoffman guy over here.
I would love the ERA's under 1. I keep seeing that number. I'm like, maybe someone in Philly will notice that number before it goes up. That 0 in front of the ERA has to jump out to somebody, right?
That has to be. They have to notice how cool that.
I think Alvarado got over 4 today, or at least right around there. So I just really like Jeff Hoffman. I think he's
me too.
Nasty, fun to watch. I do get Alvarado's nasty too, but and I know the left righty. I am fully fine with using the right leverage guys in the right spots. I know it's frustrating for fantasy, but I guess you guys are trying to win games. But I would like some Jeff Hoffman saves here in the second half. That'd make me happy. But
I think we have a real chance to get him too if Alvarado doesn't turn around. So hold all your Hoffman shares, and if you are chasing saves and he's available in some shallower formats, go get your Jeff Hoffman and just hang on for a little bit.
And fair point by PJ in the chat. I do know what Matt Strom's ERA is.
Yes.
It's been nasty. He's been really good too. He's at 0.72, so I think he's a little bit better than Hoffman. But those two guys. Matt Strom is 35% K minus walk right now.
That is bananas. They've really put together a brilliant bullpen, and that's the beauty. The reason they are able to run a lefty closer in Alvarado is because they have all these other lefties they can go to, Strom and Soto chief among them. I guess it's just those two, but that's 2 more. And the big lefty bias and why there aren't so many lefty closers is because there's usually just one main lefty in the bullpen. But when you got 3, you can have one as the closer. So they'll probably keep tandeming Hoffman and Alvarado. We're just hoping that Hoffman pushes closer toward the 60% side of the share.
As a baseball fan without a team in the mix right now, we kind of all deserve Dodgers, Phillies, Yankees, Orioles as the two championship series. Those would be. I know there's not a ton of great teams in baseball. The people lamenting that on Twitter this week, but man, those 4 teams are really nasty right now.
Yeah. So absent a ton of good teams, let's just get the 4 best. Can we get a chalky playoff and just get those 4 teams trading punches? The Yankees Dodgers series this weekend was awesome.
So fun. Like those crowds are just great. The Dodgers had traveled huge to that series. They have a group that I think they go to 1 or 2 road series a year, and obviously they picked that one. And they were like marching through the Bronx. It was a wild scene out there.
That's fantastic. I really loved it, and I like that they were selling Ohtani jerseys over there. I've always wondered. I always feel like the road team should bring a box of merchandise. To Why not?
There's always some people there with the wrong jersey on.
I go to Texas and Houston games to see the Tigers. So if you had, and again, make the road team bring it. They can take home what isn't sold. They share a little bit of the rep. It's not going to make or break the budget at the end of the year, but I think it would be smart to have that.
Get you a new Javier Baez jersey, all set and good to
go.
Yeah,
cool. I got to clean up some, mold in my shower. So yeah, I'll get right on that.
Sorry, you left me too open for that one. Let's talk hitter FAAB real quick before we jump out of here. But first, a note from our sponsor at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states across the country. Prize Picks is really simple to play. I can make my picks and submit my entry in less than 60 seconds. You just pick more or less on 2 more player stats and watch the winnings roll in. We got a lot of sports going on right now. You can play the NBA Finals. You can play the Stanley Cup Finals. You play the U.S. Open this weekend. If you're a golf fan, obviously a huge event this week at Pinehurst. You make it. Prize Picks has quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and enormous selection of players and stat types. What makes Prize Picks the #1 daily fantasy sports app? Download the app today and use code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. That's promo code ROTOPOD for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy with Prize Picks. So, Paul, what about offense this week? Again, we had some call-ups that I want to ask you about. We've got 4 or 5 names. Let's start with Justyn-Henry Malloy, since you're the Tigers fan. We talked about him a little bit last week. Torkelson got sent down like right when Jeff and I started broadcasting last week. It was like right before the deadline. What do you feel about Justyn-Henry Malloy, both fantasy-wise? What were you doing with him?
I'm really intrigued by Justyn-Henry Malloy. Problem is, it's more intrigue for real life than it is fantasy, because I'm just not sure if he's really got the fantasy juice. I don't think the power is necessarily at the level it needs to be, and he's not really much of a runner. 3 for 6 in the minors. Takes a bunch of walks. I love it. But I wonder if we got another like Edward Julian on our hands, a guy that I was very interested in this year, but actually recently cut because of the send down. So that's kind of where I'm at. So temper your hopes and expectations with Justyn-Henry Malloy. Excited, but I think it's 15s and maybe some 12s if you are in a tough position.
Someone asked in the chat about Taylor Walls. I don't think Taylor Walls can hit a baseball, so I'm not picking up Taylor Walls. I do not think he is. I know if you're desperate for stolen bases, I know he had 22 last year, but you're talking about a guy who's a career 190 hitter across 1,000 plate appearances. I am just not doing it.
Yeah, and the only thing is that they do like him for his defense, so they'll give him some PT.
Stud defender.
But don't get sucked in on Taylor Walls. I totally agree.
Another guy that was called up, Spencer Horwitz in Toronto, was the guy that I kind of moved up my list as the day went on. I really like the fact that he hit. I think he hit first today and second yesterday. This looks to me like a batting average guy. He hit 337 in AAA last year. I know the BABIP was high, but that's still a pretty good number. Hit 297 the year before in AA. In 335 in AAA this year in 260 plate appearances. Not a ton of speed, a little bit of pop. What do you think about Spencer Horwitz? I was intrigued by the batting average spot here in Toronto.
Completely agree there that the batting average was what really drew me to Spencer Horwitz. I didn't end up getting him. He went 55. It looks like I think I might have been third on him then, because 17 was the backup there. So, there was that one person who was interested in my main there that really pushed up the bid. Again, I wouldn't have gotten him anyway. I was at 15 instead of the 17, but batting average is so difficult to find.
It is.
Especially in season, right? Like late in the draft, and then once you get the season going, it can be really difficult. But that is what Horwitz can do. And I took away the same exact thing that you did. When I saw that he batted second and first, that really put him in for me and pushed him up the board. So again, I didn't pay the fare because I don't have the money. I didn't have the need, but I do really like the talent. So if you're still doing bids, I know some people run their bids every single night, and Horwitz is out there. I think he's worth taking a look at.
I do too, and he's playing. I know he's eligible at first base right now, but he's playing second base for the.
I meant to mention that too.
He's gonna be a corner middle, eligible guy, those are gold. Like you just suddenly, that gives you a free bench spot. You can have that guy on the bench, covers 2 spots. You can pick up anybody else you want. You can pick up a stash, a reliever spec. They like that guy that covers corner and middle has a lot of value in any kind of roto league that we're used to.
There is real value in that. And so Horwitz, if he can get that relatively soon, that'd be great. Definitely go for Spencer Horwitz. I think 15s, some 12s, and then probably not 10s still, because we don't know that he's a full-time starter, but at least put him on the watch list, because if they might start dumping. We could be living in a world where they might start moving some of the older pieces and opening the window for some of these guys to see what they've got. Because I don't know if they can do a full teardown, but they might have to start to do a retool, and that could open up full-time burn for Spencer Horwitz.
Yeah, it'd be interesting, like how much they really want that 5th or 6th wild card spot, because they're obviously dead. They're dead and buried in the division. That's long gone. But the AL, like after those top. I guess it's probably the 5 teams. You want to put Kansas City in there. That 6th spot. I think Kansas City probably. I hope not. I've enjoyed that story. But if they drop back a little bit, there's kind of like 6 teams for 2 spots, and Toronto's kind of in that mix. But I just don't know how much you want to sell out for those spots. It'll be interesting to see what those teams, if any of them do become sellers, like you mentioned.
I wouldn't if I were them. Right. I'm not their GM, but I would be looking, like I said, to retool. I know you can't completely rip it, but I know if you get in the dance, you got a shot. I totally get that.
Yeah. And last year proved that, I suppose. Yeah,
exactly. But I think they just might have such a difficult time even getting in there. Why not start to get some prospect capital built up again? Because it's starting to dry out a bit.
A guy that was not available in NFBC leagues, but obviously available in many others, Adel Amador in Colorado. called him up straight from Double-A, which you don't see very often. It's the Rockies, so who the heck knows what to do with his playing time? I'm fully accepting that I am not going to be able to predict that, but this is a guy with some speed. He had 22 stolen bases in 209 plate appearances so far in Double-A this year. A pretty big prospect. He was like a top 50 overall prospect. I think I saw something in the 30s. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one, but a little bit of pop in the minors too. He had 15 home runs in 2022 as a 19-year-old in A-ball. It's really impressive as a teenager. What do you think about Amador? Do you think the Rockies play him? Do you think he's someone that's going to get big bids for us in FBC coming up? Did you pick him up in other leagues? What'd you do with Amador today?
So we're going to be silly and do something called using logic here. So this doesn't necessarily apply to the Rockies. And you're right, by the way, 32nd prospect on MLB Pipeline. So very well regarded. They should just play him, right? Coming up for Brendan Rodgers, basically. Just put him in. You made this plunge to take him from Double-A. Why would you not just play him? I am very intrigued by him. Anytime you can get a guy with the Rockies, you got to have some interest. You at least got to do your due diligence and make sure, hey, do I want this guy? For me, the answer is yes. And that is despite the fact that he's only hitting 194 in Double-A. He had 7 homers and 22 steals. So there's fantasy juice despite the fact that he wasn't hitting for any average. The 208 BABIP tells me that. And that's what they probably saw, and that's why they didn't even care. So credit to the Rockies on that one, not just saying, well, he's hitting 194, we can't bring him up. 16% walk rate is another great way for the steals, too. So that if Amador doesn't quite hit right away, he's still getting on base with some consistency. So I'm very intrigued. I'm slightly wishing that he doesn't go crazy this week because we know those bids will be sky high, but regardless of how it goes, I'm almost certainly going to be interested next Sunday when we can get him in the NFBC. If you can already get him, I think you can get him in 15s. I think there's some 12 viability if you're chasing speed. Again, probably fringe on the 10s unless you are just desperate for speed and happen to have the middle infield second base opening.
Prospects are so tough, and it's so tough to hit the major league level, but you get a guy who doesn't strike out and he walks. I just think that brings the floor for a prospect for a little bit in cores, but never had a strikeout rate above 20% in the minors. Always had a walk rate of at least 10%. This is someone that just you're right. He's going to get on base if he can steal. I mean, the 2.8 BABIP, he hit 302 and 292 his last couple of years in the minors. The batting average could be there, has been there in the past. I'm surprised. I'm actually surprised the Rockies did it at 194. I would have thought they'd be a team we're not bringing up this guy hitting 200, but gonna be a fun watch. The Rockies are home the second half of the week. They're at the Dodgers, they're at Minnesota, sorry, and then home against Pittsburgh, and they play at the Dodgers at home the week after that.
They get a whole Colorado week next week.
They have 10 straight home games starting on Friday through the next Sunday.
The following week, I should say. That's
they
faulty terminology there.
They got three road games, then 10 straight home games after that. So it's it made you stretch. For a guy to get called up, this is a pretty good one. If he gets 2 week a run, it'd be pretty fun. So I think you're right. We hope he doesn't go too crazy this week, but if he does, this could be a guy that gets a big bid next week.
Yeah, so keep tabs on Adele Amador. And like I said, if you can get him already, jump now.
The Orioles, we've talked about a bunch. Seemingly they have an unlimited run of prospects. They just keep getting called up. And, we've had Kerstad and Holiday and obviously the guys they called up last year with Rutschman and Gunnar Henderson. They just have studs coming out of everywhere. Jordan Westberg. They called up Connor Norby this week. Did you do anything with him in FAAB, or are you kind of thinking that when Jorge Mateo comes back, he goes back down? That was my concern, is that this might be a real quick up and back for Norby.
Exactly. And so I didn't really go for it because I just really wasn't sure where it was going to be with Connor Norby, and I was willing to kind of lose on that. If he happens to click right away, then hat tip to my opponents because he's not playing every day. I like that he's on Baltimore, sure, but it looks like he's short side platoon right now. So intrigued by Connor Norby long term. Again, dynasties, keeper leagues, sure, but in our redraft situations right now, it was a pass for me.
Yeah, it was a pass for me too for kind of everything you said. And the Orioles have kind of shown their hands with this stuff already this year. We just don't know. And this one feels like even less likely to play than some of the other ones did. So I was intrigued by Norby, but I just couldn't do it in fantasy quite this week. Those are kind of the prospects that got called up. What about Blake Dunn in Cincinnati? Any interest there? What'd you think about with him?
They have a seemingly endless list of randoms to call up, and I know that you guys have addressed this, Justin and I have, where all winter it was like they have to trade someone, they have too many hitters, and it's like, no, this is why you don't immediately trade the second you have an ounce of depth. But they got Jacob Hurtubise up now and Blake Dunn, but they almost seem like a a dead platoon, those two, Hurtubise and Dunn. And Dunn's on the short side. And let me look real quick next week. First off, they only have 5 games and 0 lefties. So it's a no for me with Blake Dunn. I'll keep tabs, but also Cincinnati sucks this year too. Last year I would have taken George Foster if they'd have put him back on the team, because you couldn't miss with Reds last year. But this year it's been rough. So Blake Dunn was a pass for me, but he is someone I'll keep tabs on.
After you corrected me twice last couple weeks about Hurtubise, I just really brought up Blake Dunn so you could say Hurtubise out loud.
Thank you.
What about a couple of guys who got called back up this week? We've got Joey Loperfido in Houston getting the call back up with Kyle Tucker going there. Oh, it sounds like it's going to be a short stretch for Tucker. It sounds like he might be back coming back on Friday. But then Captain Jack Suwinski in Pittsburgh got the call back up. Was a big pickup last year for people. He had a really good fantasy year last year. By the way, I think Fangraphs just went to their new player pages as we were doing this, because I just every page I go to now has the picture. They're actually pretty sharp.
Okay, it's working for you?
It's working for me at the moment, yeah.
For me, it is bugging out a little bit. It's
flashing. The top of the page is flashing a little bit for me too. I see what you mean.
Yeah, so but it literally just happened, I think at midnight Eastern.
I gotcha.
I think I'm gonna have to message them and let them know. I was using the beta and it was working fine, but now that it's live, I think that is a little messed up there.
It just reflected on me. But Suwinski last year, 26 home runs, 13 stolen bases, 74 RBIs, 63 runs scored. Like, he was really, really valuable last year. I know he strikes out a ton. I had some bids in on him. I just think this is one of those guys, like, if he just gets hot for a little bit, like that's the kind of thing you want to run into in fantasy leagues. And he feels like a streaky guy to me. They go to Coors this week. We mentioned that earlier, talking about the Rockies. They play in Colorado this weekend. I was in on Suwinski. I know there's a lot of swing and miss, a lot of batting average downside, but there is some fantasy goodness here too.
I lost 12-10 on picking Suwinski back up. I drafted him. He was one of my guys this year. Very big Suwinski fan. Unfortunately, it hasn't gone well, but like I practice what I preach there. I'm not afraid to go back and get somebody. Unfortunately, didn't bid high enough. The interesting thing is, early part of the year, he had really cut into his strikeout rate. And I wonder what sort of game plan they had for it, and if it really took away that power. I think Jack Suwinski might have been making contact just to make contact, because like, oh, hey, I'm cutting down my K rate. He has a lot of talent. This is a guy you go for. And so, again, I didn't put a huge bid in, but he can get hot. He, even with this year's suckiness, 5 and 5 homers, 5 steals. So I really like him. I think he's 12s and above, maybe some fringe 10s since he is going to Colorado. If it's 5 outfielders, I know a lot of 10s are only 3 outfielders. I don't think you're getting Suwinski there, but 5 outfielder formats, I'm intrigued. I still have hope for him. And I hope going down into AAA and clearing his head was all he needed to kind of get going again. He didn't crush it down there, but you never know if they're just working on stuff too. He's just going down there to play every day, unencumbered, and feel some success there. So I'm excited to see what Suwinski can do. Homered first game back too, which is always nice. And then had a couple hits on the 6th as well. So I like what we're seeing out of Suwinski since he's come back. Loved him tonight. I should have gone higher though. 10 was too wimpy, but again, I'm pinching pennies, and so maybe it's my own fault that I've cut too many guys and spent too much money, or else I could have gone 15 on him and gotten him.
Yeah, I went in like the low to mid 20s, and I ended up winning a couple spots by over. Funny thing is, I overbid in mine. Like, there was backup was low in one, then kind of middling in the other, but. I just think fantasy-wise, I mean, you get me a guy that went 26-13. I agree with you on the contact. I think he was just making contact to not strike out. The hard hit rate was way down. You got to find a happy medium in there somewhere. You want the home runs. You want him to be in the extra base hits, the hard contact. Drop the strikeout rate a little bit, but there's always a happy medium there. Some guys kind of go too far the other direction, and I think that's what Suwinski did. So it'll be interesting to see what he does. A lot of righties this week, which means he's going to play a bunch. They do have Coors also. I'm hoping it's a good week, because one of those guys that can get hot. He maybe stick in the lineup for a while here.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Anybody else that you liked in office week? I feel like everybody else is kind of in the mix. Like, there were some guys that got sent down. Like James Outman's 28% roster in the main event right now, and has gone down, hit pretty well in the minors so far. The Dodgers need offense in the bottom half of the lineup, so I kind of think he's coming back soon. Noelvi Marte is still 30% rostered only in the NFBC RotoWire Online Championship 12 teamers. He's eligible. I think it's on June 26th. Gonna make his rehab starts even before that. I think he's gonna make rehab starts here in the next week or so. He's able to play in the minors.
He can go while suspended.
Yeah, he can go while suspended. So anybody else you liked on offense? I kind of hit the the Suwinski, Loperfido, and then some of the rookies. But what else were you doing in terms of, kind of helping out your offense this week?
I kept it pretty quiet there. We hit on the guys that I was really interested in with Horwitz and Suwinski specifically, but nothing really jumped out to me. Otherwise, I'm seeing some folks stashing Eloy Jimenez, which I totally get. I've been on that train a million times, including all the derailments.
Me too.
I wasn't as keen on going back to that well there. But yeah, I just didn't find it to be terribly robust outside of Horwitz and Suwinski there, and I didn't really have room for a hitting stash. Right. I like to get some more pitchers on the reserve roster, so that's why if I couldn't get Suwinski or Horwitz, I ended up pivoting to pitchers.
What last guy I want to ask you about, just because I got you here and you're a Tigers fan, what's your thoughts these days on Parker Meadows?
Sorry about that. Got caught taking a drink. But with Parker Meadows, this is another guy that they had to send down just to let him go down to the minors and feel some success. I don't think that they're out on him. They actually gave him a long time. I think they could have been justified in sending him out a couple weeks before that, but they really tried to stay committed to their guy, and I do appreciate that. But at a certain point, if you're just devastatingly overmatched, then it's working against you. There's being challenged, and then there's being crushed. Parker Meadows was being crushed. So I think this is another one. Go down, get your head clear, figure some things out. He has a 918 OPS down there with 6 homers, 11 steals. Parker Meadows is someone I'll be going for right away upon return. So I'm keeping tabs on him. I'm sure he's being stashed in a lot of leagues. I think he was actually picked up in my good main. Yep, picked up $3 on an unopposed bid. But again, I didn't have room for an outfield stash, so I can't get upset about that.
Sometimes you don't have that room. It's just down the way. Like you said before, so it's good for a roster, maybe not your roster. Is
exactly
really
how that worked out with Meadows.
A number of people in the chat are asking about Tyler Locklear in Seattle, who I think made his first start today. Was not available in NFBC leagues. Do you have any feelings or thoughts on him as a prospect coming up?
Is his mom Heather? If so, I'd like to see her go to the games.
If so, she just doubled the FAAB price next week.
Exactly. No, I read up on him late tonight, kind of seeing what was going on because I didn't know too much about him. Didn't end up going for him, but I am going to keep tabs because he is in for the Ty France injury.
Yep.
And, a guy who's starting on a solid team. Their offense hasn't been great. Has some intrigue, but no, I didn't end up with Tyler Locklear anywhere, and we'll see what happens. Oh, and actually, no, I only read up on him for one league where I could pick him up because in NFBC we couldn't even get him, right? Because he debuted today.
He was not. He debuted today, so he was not available.
Yeah, so this was just in a league where you can pick up guys regardless, even if they're in the minors. And so I didn't end up getting him there, but Tyler Locklear, I'll keep tabs on him this week, and maybe he's somebody you and Jeff talk about next week if he pops off for a nice week.
Kind of my thought too. Paul Jordan Carter asked, "What do you think of his 10-man points team?" You're probably more about 10-man leagues. I'm only in 15 and 12 teamers. What do you think about the squad? It looks pretty darn good to me.
Yeah, but, spot checking this.
All 10 teamers look pretty good to me, though.
That is true, but even applying that filter to it, it's looking pretty good with some potential upside here. Obviously, Royce Lewis is back. Soto just got nicked, but he's going to be fine. The pitching looks pretty good. Adley Garcia, you had a list of guys, studs that have been struggling, and he was among those. But that's kind of ebbs and flows of Adolis Garcia. I don't want to take a victory lap on that. I've been so wrong on him the last couple of years.
Yeah, no, me too. I don't touch that one either. Yeah.
Yep. I just step away. But it does look like a competitive ball club here. Anytime you got Betts, Witt as your core there, and some great pitchers with Kirby, Steele, and Reagans, and Webb, I think you're in a good spot there. So I think that's a competitive team, but you're going to have to stay aggressive. 10 teamers, you're always staying aggressive because you're trying to find the next star. You don't want like small temporary replacements. You're trying to find a superstar to consolidate. So you got to be sticking and moving with those last 3-4 roster spots, hoping to land on the next big thing, like the Luis Heels of the world that go from waiver pickup to dominant stud.
Do you even sort of feel what the Yankees are going to do with Luis Heel's innings? I keep looking at his innings for the last few years. I'm like, at some point they've got to fake IL to him or something. They've said they're just kind of going with it, right?
They said that it's going to be open right now. Now, of course, things can change on a dime. So don't just go around thinking, well, then he's definitely going to be good. But as it stands right now, I'm not doing anything. He was somebody I really liked coming into the year, and it's paid massive dividends. So I'm just operating with the wonderful found money I have. I wouldn't be trying to trade him or get out from under it. Luis Heel, I'm along for the ride. If that means it ends in August, thank you for your service. It was brilliant. If they get him to the finish line, all the better. He is a little bit older at age 26. You mentioned how the fact that Heel has no innings the last few years. But at age 26, it might be a situation where it's like, hey, we can't really baby him. We're one of the best teams in baseball. He's one of the best pitchers in baseball. The bullets are there. Use them, because these shutdown methods, they don't work, Scott. You and Jeff talk about this all the time.
Yep.
None of this garbage works. And so I understand why teams want to do it. But to me, it's like the coaches punting in the NFL. You get off the hook by just shutting them down. You don't have to answer any tough questions. I would like to see the Yankees show some, intestinal fortitude and say, we're not going to shut him down. If something happens, something happens. But we're going to go with Luis Gil, who's pitching like an ace right now. They have not missed Garrett
fun.
Cole
He's fun to
at
watch,
all.
too. I know.
Oh, yeah. He's every fifth day. Even if I didn't have him on a roster, I'd be watching him every fifth day. The fact is, I got him on my most important team, so I watch him all the time.
What was that, like 22nd, 23rd, 24th round, somewhere in there?
Oh, yeah. It was a late pick. I fell for the spring. He's a guy I liked previously. Yeah. So once the spring was going, I was like, I'm in. I have to get him. He was one of those guys, one of those late rounders that you really have to get.
Yep.
And it's paid beautiful dividends so far.
He's been awesome. I have him on my auction team. I think I missed him in the main event. I think maybe that was like the day that Adam Warren was gonna be the fifth starter.
Oh, yeah.
It was like that,
no, Will Warren.
Will Warren. There was like that 48 hours was gonna be Will Warren. I'm like, man, I really like Heel, but I can't take him because he's not going to start. And here we are. But did get him in a couple spots though. But he's been awesome. Before we jump out of here, one guy I want to ask you about that it's been really rough is Michael Harris II in Atlanta. Since he's kind of okay in April, but not great. And then we go since May 1. It's been really bad. He's hitting $189, 6 RBI since May 1st. Like, this is brutal. There are, Sadane Rafael had 7 RBIs in the game himself. Like, what are we doing here? This has got 6 RBIs since May 1st. Are you concerned about Michael Harris? I think this is someone, he was moving up in drafts. He was like the late second, early third, mid third round guy by the time we got to main events. What do you make of Michael Harris 2 months into the season here?
Thank you for repeating the name, because I was defending the honor of Heather Locklear in the chat, and so
wait, someone besmirched the honor of Heather
Locklear?
Just
pointing out her age. I'm like, okay, you can be hot at 62, and Heather Locklear is still absolutely hot. So let's chill. Michael Harris. I don't want to go too confirmation bias, victory lap, whatever you call it. It's just a guy I've never really been in on though.
Okay,
and so I'm not terribly surprised here. Now, we weren't in on him last year. I say we, Justin and I, on the pod, we were notably anti Michael Harris in the second round. And he turned it around in the season. We didn't take any early victory laps, but if we had in May, we would have looked stupid by October. So
even then, it was like fine. He didn't lose your league in the second round, but he didn't
exactly
kick assy there either. It was like kind of, it was a good season. He hit 293. The second half was really nice, but man, it's rough right now, and I don't know.
It's really rough, and you know what? With the squishy ball that they're using, I don't know if it's actually squishy, but the way it comes off the bat seems like it's a squishy ball. A guy like this with middling power is really going to face the consequences of that. He's already an 18-19 guy. If that drops to 14-15, then you're fully reliant on the speed and average, and the average isn't there right now. So again, I'm not going to say that Michael Harris is cooked just because I wasn't in on him, but he wasn't a guy I liked because I just don't like the volatility of his profile, and the price remains high. And so that's the main reason that I just didn't go for him. I think you got to ride it out for now. Maybe 10s, you can maybe start looking at a cut. I probably still wouldn't, if I'm being honest, but 12s and 15s, I think you just have to ride the ride and kind of see where it goes.
Yeah, and I think we're going to get a batting average run here at some point. So at least we're going to get that, I believe. But I just think, even last year he stole 20 bases, and that was a year where everybody stole 20 bases.
That's the thing. 20 doesn't jump out the way it did.
It wasn't. They used to. Like 2022, the 20 jumped out. Last year, you needed more than that to really jump out. When if you're going to hit 18 home runs, you probably got to steal 35 for it to really work at that price range. So it's been interesting, and I don't see, you don't see a ton. If you look at his metrics, like the hard contact is, good, not great. The barrel rates, not good. It's under 40th percentile. There's not a lot to be like, oh, he's just been unlucky or something like that. The strikeout rate and walk rates are both below average. He's kind of a guy right now, which is which sucks because he's fun. He's fun to watch. I do like watching him play, but he's kind of just a guy right now.
There's nothing you can point to with Michael Harris to say, oh, this says he's going to come to fruition. It's more of like, I paid a pretty high price on him. He's on a great team. I'm going to see where it goes and just kind of hope.
Yeah, I think he's one of those guys we talked about, earlier, like mid-round guys. Maybe think about. I think Michael Harris, you're just kind of living with. If he's bad all year, maybe you're not going to win because of it. But I think you got to do it. Timothy
Agreed.
Tunks in the chat. Nothing happened to Jeff. He just happens to be out of town this weekend. I actually talked to him this evening. He's doing great, but he'll be back. I'll be back next week. But Paul, anything else you want to talk about? Anything else on your mind? Kind of got through everything I wanted to talk about.
I think we nailed it. Yeah.
Who's really good, by the way, is Adley Rutschman.
Oh my God, he's one of my favorite players. I love him. He, we talk about things coming together like that
Oh,
looked so obvious. Him coming out as a number one, and listen, me saying a number one pick was going to be great.
right.
Wow, what a risk there. But like again, when it
Yeah.
comes together the way it's supposed to, that's nice.
Yeah.
And he has been everything that he was supposed to be. The first comp that I had for him, just in terms of the overall profile, the leadership, everything, was just switch hitting Buster Posey. And I really believe that that's who he's
Yeah.
going to be, both with the statistical profile and the leadership piece, and maybe with the World Series. What did Buster win? 3? I could see, was he part of all 3 of the Giants ones?
Sadly, yes, they won 3.
Yeah. And I could see the O's putting together 3. I
Yeah.
love Adley, literally one of my favorite players in the game.
And it's weird. It feels like he's been there for 10 years. Like he just,
I know.
he's just like, he's like, oh, it's Rutschman. And then he's only been there this is his 3rd year, but like, this dude's awesome. He rakes. What do you have? 5 or 6? He had a ton of RBIs today. I didn't have the number right in front of me, but he had a big game today. And it's fun. He's just really, really good and just going to be good for a long freaking time.
And I like to pay for catcher. Like catcher was deep this year. Don't get me wrong, but I have played exclusively.
Those top guys have been. I mean, you look at Will Smith, Rutschman, and Contreras. Like
Smith's the one I got.
Oh yeah, Contreras
went right before him.
Contreras leading the National League in runs.
You have to say which one. It's William, of course, because Wilson's hurt. But oh my God, how great are those two guys, William and Wilson? I know Wilson's hurt, but yeah.
Really
so I like paying for catcher. Adley's always a target. Like I said, he got snaked right before me. I settled, quote unquote, for Will Smith. I'm certainly very happy.
Yeah. Someone asked in the chat, real quick before we jump out of here, what level outfielder would you trade for Brian Wu? I'm going to let you answer because I'm a little biased because I love Brian Wu.
I like Brian Wu too, so I'm going to be asking for something that's pretty decent if I'm going to go for him. I'm thinking maybe something, I don't know, maybe Jake Myers is too light, I'm thinking maybe. But that's kind of the vibe I'm getting. I want maybe like a power speed guy kind of in that middle.
Yeah.
Maybe shoot a little bit higher than Jake Myers.
Jake
but
Myers
that kind of profile.
Jake Myers is a little low for me, but yeah, that kind of profile. I get what you're saying. I'd probably go a little bit, maybe someone like a 6th, 7th rounder kind of guy, like a top, whatever that might be, a top 100 outfielder somewhere in there.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. What about like maybe like he's got the fantasy juice, but not the triple slash, like a Christopher Morel, 12 homers, 6 steals.
It's a good. That's a good like right in the right zone right there.
Yeah, him or Varsho, maybe one of those two.
Yeah, I'd probably take Wu over Varsho. I'd probably take Morel over Wu.
Okay, I like that.
Right, but you're right in that right range. Someone in the chat said David Dahl, and that's our note that it's time to get out of here. We're starting to get officially ridiculous when David Dahl is. I can't believe. I actually went and looked to make sure it was the same David Dahl.
Oh yeah.
There's no way it's the guy from the Rockies from ever ago. Right?
I loved him with the Rockies.
I
would have given him my knees if he wanted. My knees suck too. They're probably worse than his, but I would have done anything to just get a 140 game season out of David Dahl. I really liked him.
Did you know that David Peralta's back in the majors too? The same
Yes.
David Peralta also. Like that was one today. Like, is it the same one? I better look.
And you do it.
But yeah.
You have to check because, right, we're going to have a Max Muncy coming up soon for the Oakland A's that is not related even to the other Max Muncy. How crazy is that? That's not a common name.
No,
Max Muncy.
That is a very odd one. So, yeah.
Crazy.
We're talking Michael Taylor here or something where you got to put middle
Yeah.
but it makes sense. But, yeah. So, cool. Well, I want to thank everybody for listening. There was a lot of people in the chat talking. Sorry we get to all the questions. I tried to answer as much as I could, but do appreciate everybody in there. I want to thank Prize Picks for the sponsorship of the podcast. We really appreciate that. More than anything, Paul, I want to thank you for coming on. I don't know if we've done a podcast one-on-one.
I don't know if we have.
It feels weird that we haven't. I feel like at least during COVID, we must have had you on at some point, didn't we?
I could see that, and I feel like we had to have had you on the Sleeper in the Bus too, because Justin always books guests.
Yeah, he
loves you.
Justin's wife and my wife went to high school together. Did you know that?
I did know that. He told me, and it's like it's so crazy because I knew y'all had a great friendship, and he's like, yeah. We're linked out of baseball. And I was like, that's so crazy.
Yeah, it is pretty wild. So, but really want to thank you for coming on. I do mean it. I'm not just saying it. You are one of my favorite people. I love seeing you in Vegas, love hanging out. More than I love talking baseball with you. You make me smarter when you talk baseball, especially talking pitching. I love listening to your podcast. I love listening to you talk pitching. You guys win awards all the time, always well deserved. So I do really appreciate taking the time to jump on. I know it's a Sunday night. You probably got better stuff to do than talk to me for an hour and a half. So I do really appreciate it. It was really fun to have you on. Hopefully we can do it again, but I want to thank you for that. One more time, tell everybody, maybe if they weren't listening at the beginning, where they can find all your great work.
Can hit me up on Twitter at Sporer. I'm not on a ton, but I try to check, see if anybody has fantasy questions over there. But I'm over at Fangraphs. I write the daily SP chart. Every Wednesday I do a chat. You can come in, get get your questions answered there. Also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Sporer. I do a box score show 2-3 times a week in the morning, and we're just kind of doing this. I'm answering chat, going through the box scores, hanging out. You can always ask fantasy questions there. So yeah, you can find me on Twitch, Twitter, and Fangraphs.
Beautiful. Well, thanks, Paul, for jumping on. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We hope everybody has a really good week. Hopefully, have a good fantasy week. Jeff and I will be back with you next Sunday night talking more baseball. Hope everybody has a good one, and take care.